All right, so you guys are 8th period. You're going to go to your dashboard. I'm going to swap to student view so it looks like yours. When you scroll down, find today. Today is the 29th. And you notice it says 28 and 29. That's because odd-numbered classes had it yesterday on the 28th. You guys have it today on the 29th. So today, sorry, I am not talented enough to talk and type at the same time. My apologies. So today, here's what we're going to do. In class together, you and I right now, we're going to look at the virtual lab. We're also going to look at the lab worksheet, okay, the one that says download. Then we're going to talk about the reflection. Then you, on your own, sometime before midnight tomorrow, are going to do the one right here that says lab complete for a grade. When we look at the virtual lab, you're going to download and open this lab worksheet, and I'm going to send that to you and show you how to get it, tell you what to put on it. And we're going to talk about the reflection. We're going to do the lab and go over it together. Then you're going to take that information and do your lab. My other class today had about the last 15 minutes or so to work on it. So we'll try to give you some time in class, but if not, you'll definitely have all of the information before we leave today. So here's what I want you to do right now. Okay, I want you to go ahead and open this one that says lab worksheet. When you do that, it'll look like this. It's a PDF. Okay, at the top right here, click download. Once you click download, it will show down here in the bottom of your screen as a PDF. Right click and open. I'm also going to send it to you guys in the chat box. And hopefully you should be able to open it from there as well. So far, Zoom has been pretty good about letting us share files. So go ahead, take a minute and get this open. Okay, go ahead and get this open. And then I'll show you what to do and how to upload it and how to do it. Okay, take just a second and make sure you have this lab document open. As we go through, we're going to look at the lab together. You're going to take a few notes, okay, of answers. Hint, hint, you need to write down. If you cannot easily edit the PDF, don't panic, okay? You can jot them down on a blank piece of notebook paper. You can jot it down in a blank document. You can write it on your hand in Sharpie for all I care, okay? Because you're not going to have to upload the PDF, all right? This is just for us to take some notes on and jot down things as we go through the lab. And then when you open this lab tonight at some point, okay, or tomorrow, whenever you do it, it says a quiz because it's set up as a quiz. It's not actually a quiz, but you'll be able to type the answers to your questions here. Okay, there's 3. We're going to talk about them today. And then there's some multiple choice. So you're not going to upload this PDF. Okay, I just want you to have it so that you can use it to jot down information so that you have the steps of the lab and what to do in case you need to go back and do it on your own. When you open this lab worksheet, there's 8 pages. Okay, these are the step-by-step directions. I'm going to skip this, and you are too, because we're going to go through it together. So I want you to skip on down to page 6. Okay? It's got a bunch of charts for you to fill in, but this is the part we're going to do together. We're going to do it in the chat box. We're going to do it on my screen. So don't worry about writing down all your answers there. I only want you to work right here on page 6, and I will show you what to put on there in just a second. All right, so open your lab sheet, go to page 6. Then we're going to do the lab together. Okay? You can print it if you want to, but again, you don't have to upload it or anything, and we're just going to jot down the answers to a few questions, so you don't have to print it. You don't have to upload the worksheet. So if you can't, okay, so this lab sheet, all right, if you cannot edit your PDF, don't panic, all right? The only parts we're going to do on this lab sheet right here, on this PDF, are these 3 boxes right here. So if you really want to print it, all you need to print is this page. If you can't write on it, all you have to do is handwrite, because we're only answering these 3 questions. Okay? You don't have to upload it, so don't worry if you can't type on it. There are charts here for your information, but that's what we're going to do in just a minute together. So you don't need to write those all out, because we're going to write them on my screen together. So I only want you on page 6, and we're just going to look at these 3 questions right here on page 6. You're not going to upload or turn in this document. When you open the one, okay, over here, this is why I wanted us to do it together, because it's kind of confusing this year. But when you open this right here where it says lab complete for a grade, it has those 3 boxes. And you're going to type your answer. So whatever we jot down and answer on that sheet, you're going to type here. You won't be able to upload that PDF, because that caused mass chaos last time. So I didn't even make that an option. You're just going to type it right here in the little assignment. You don't have to upload the PDF. Okay? You're going to type 3 questions. These are the ones we're going to go over and answer in class. That's why I said you could put your answers here so you have them. Then later tonight, you're going to go back and do this, because there are also a few multiple choice questions for you to answer down there. So don't panic if you can't write on it, not a big deal. Yes, it should be super easy 100, because we're going to do it together, step by step. I have to leave student view. Here we go. All right. I can't fly all of us down to the Galapagos to look at the birds like Darwin did, so we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to do a virtual lab. Okay, so with this virtual lab, we're going to explore natural selection by performing a field study of Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands.
While on this excursion, you will observe 3 flocks of birds. Click each bird to hear more. Although they are differently colored, that is unimportant. What you will want to focus on is their beak structure. Each flock will be feeding on all 3 types of foods. Due to their beak structure, each has a preferred food type, but they will all feed on any type available as they are competing for a limited food supply. Take a look at the environment on the screen. Notice that there are 3 types of foods available: 300 pieces of food total. There are also equal numbers of all 3 flocks of birds. Before you observe the flocks of birds feeding, predict the outcome. What do you think the feeding results of this generation of bird will be?
All right, there are 10 birds in each flock. Flock X up here in the top left, Y is the dark yellow orange colored guy, and Z down here at the bottom. So there are 30 birds. There are 300 pieces of food, 100 seeds, 100 fruits, and 100 bugs. So in the chat box, make some predictions. Remember he said that they can all eat any of them, but they have one they prefer more than the rest. So what do you think is going to happen? Okay, so what do you think flock X is going to do? Okay, we think they might all fight. Yes, there are 100 of each food, making 300 pieces of food, and 30 birds. All right, so we think flock X might eat more. They're going to go for the one they prefer, but make some more in-depth predictions. Maybe they all get the same amount. All right, but in real life, we know that doesn't happen very much. Okay, so look at maybe how these birds are shaped or how they're different. All right, so flock X has a skinnier beak. Maybe they could get more food. You think they might eat the bugs? Depends on who's faster. Okay, so for me, this is just my personal thought. I predict that flock Y could eat more fruit because their beak is larger. All right, that's just my personal prediction, just my thought. I don't know. All right, so Lauren says flock Y eats the fruit, which it does look like cherries on here. Flock X gets the bugs because they've got a longer beak, and Z eats the seeds because they're smaller. All right, so our prediction. Dun, 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 this is where your lab sheet comes in. Environment with equal amounts of insects, seeds, and fruits. You're going to make a prediction. This is where I said jot it down. You don't even have to type it on this document. Okay? If you can't open that document, just write it on a blank piece of paper. Write it on the back of your hand. Type it in a blank Word document. Email it to yourself. Text it to your best friend so you have it in your phone. I don't care. Just get the information down somewhere. I predict that blank, blank, blank will happen because blank, 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 blank. Okay. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that flock X will eat more of the fruit? Do you think that all will be the same? What do you think? You make your prediction. Okay, your students have given you some examples in the chat box. Okay, Lauren even broke hers down by each flock. Kayla said the orange bird because he could fit more. Skylar said it depends on their speed. Flock X might eat the bugs. Flock X got a skinnier beak and it could get more food. So there are a lot of examples in the chat box. On this lab document or your blank paper, wherever you're writing it, predict what you think will happen. Okay? Your friends put a lot of their good predictions in the chat box. I gave you some examples that you could use to help start yourself, but you put in your prediction. Okay, here's mine. I predict flock Y will eat more fruit because their beak is larger. You make yours. You can agree with mine, You can put something totally different. All right, you could just say that you think it's going to all be the same because birds are nice people. But you make your prediction. And that goes right here. Okay, again, if you can't write on this document, don't panic, just jot it down somewhere on a blank piece of paper. Okay, number one, I predict that blank, blank, blank will happen. We're giving you the PDF. Remember, I said it had all the directions and all the charts because you've got to get used to having the entire lab sheet and working through all of it on your own. But since it's the first one, we're going to break it down step by step and go through it together. The next one, you'll do a little bit more on your own. And by the time we do a third or fourth lab, you'll be doing this whole sheet completely on your own. So I'm just kind of baby stepping you into it because I didn't want to throw an 8-page lab document at you guys and you be completely lost. Okay, you just need to keep your answers somewhere. And like I said, if you want to text it to yourself, jot it down on a piece of paper. You're going to put those answers on the quiz. So it'd be great to go ahead and get them down now, and then all you have to do is transfer it to your quiz. All right, so Lauren said, I think flock Y eats more fruit because it has a bigger beak. Flock X will eat more bugs because it has a longer beak to get bugs out of the holes. Flock Z eats seeds because they have a smaller beak. So let's see what happens. Oh.
Now that you have made a prediction, click Next to see if your prediction matches the scenario. When you click on the Start Feeding button, all 30 birds will begin to feed on the 300 pieces of food available. Remember, each bird will try to eat its preferred food, but is able to eat any of the foods available. As the birds feed, watch the table update with food counts. All right, so after they ate, these 30 birds, 10 from each flock, ate 300 pieces of food. Flock X had 25 bugs, which was the least amount of bugs. They had 28 seeds, which is about the same as Z. But look at the amount of fruit X had. They had way more fruit than anybody else. Okay, so flock X up here had the most fruit, and because of that, they ate the most total amount of food. Flock Y, on the other hand, over here, okay, they were in the middle for bugs. They ate the most seeds, and they were kind of in the middle for fruit. So flock Z ate the most bugs. Okay? But overall, they ate the least amount of food. Look, they barely got any fruit. Follow along with me, and I will let you know when you need to write on your lab page. Okay? Just stay with me, follow along, and I promise when it's time to write on your lab sheet, I will flip back over and I will show you what to write. That's why I wanted us to do it together, because it's gonna be totally confusing if we don't. All right?
So follow with me. When we flip to the lab sheet, I'll show you what to write and where to put it. And we're going to go through this step by step.
Now you will use the data you collected to determine the sizes of the flocks in the second generation. The flock that ate the most will be the most successful at breeding, increasing in size. The flock that ate the least will shrink in size. You will use each flock's food percentage as its population percentage in the next generation. Here's how. First, compute the row of the table titled Percentage of Food Eaten. You may use a calculator and then check your computations by making sure that the total percentage is 100%. Then multiply each food percentage by the total number of birds, which is 30, and then round to the nearest whole number. Record in the last row of the table.
Okay, so this chart, remember I told you there are a bunch of charts on your lab sheet at the top? But you don't have to write all this down unless you just really want to. Because we're going through it together. It is on there, and when you start doing labs on your own, you'll need to do that part. But since we're doing it together right here on my screen, I really don't need you to write it on that lab sheet unless you just want to, okay? As long as you're here and you're engaged and you're paying attention and answering questions and helping, you don't have to write all that on your lab sheet because we're writing it here. So, if you're like me and you are not the best at math and math kind of scares you a little bit, that guy's long speech totally freaked me out. But we're going to break it down and follow his directions step by step. I'm going to do this first one and explain it, and then when we do the next one, I'll let you guys start writing on the screen and share some. So these numbers, 123, 99, 78, from the previous page, that was the total amount of food that each flock ate. So now we need to find the percent of the food that each flock ate. Remember, there were 300 pieces of food total. Flock X ate 123. So we need to figure out what percent of the food that was. All right, if I've got a piece of pizza that's 10 pieces and I eat 3 pieces, I know that 3 of 10 means I ate 30% of that pizza. If I eat 5 pieces, 5 of 10 is half, so I ate 50% of the pizza. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down and figure out how much percent they ate. So he said, divide each flock's total pieces of food by 300. So flock X ate 123 pieces. If we divide that by 300, that equals 0.41. However, he's asking for a percent, and we know that when we have a transfer to a percent, we move our decimal 1, 2 places, and this becomes a percent sign. So they ate 41% of the available food. We're going to do the same thing for flock Y. They ate 99 pieces out of the 300 that were available. Which means that they ate 0.33. When we convert that to a fraction, they ate 33% of the food available. Flock Z had 78 pieces out of the available 300 pieces. If you divide that, you should get 0.26 as a percentage, 26%. I use the annotate button to draw on my screen, and I'm going to let you guys draw on the screen in just a minute. Okay, now you can do it too, and I'll show you how to do it in just a second. So it looks like for the most part, you're with me. Does anybody have questions or not know where I got these 3 numbers for? Okay. Does anybody not understand where these 3 numbers came from? Okay, now's your time to stop me before we add on to it. Guys are good? All right, so the next step, okay, he said to figure out the number in the second generation. We know that all of those birds, or all of those flocks, started with 10 birds in the flock. But now we want to know how many in the next generation. Okay, so my parents, man and a woman, 2 people, have 2 children. That means there's 2 people in the second generation. If my sister and I each have 3 children, 3 plus 3 means there's 6 in the third generation. So we're going to do that for birds. We're basically going to figure out how many children they're going to have. Remember, each flock started with 10. So to do that, we're going to multiply the food percentage for each flock by the total number of birds. There were 30 total birds, 10 in each flock. All right, so flock X, they ate 41% of the food, which is written as 0.41. He said we need to multiply that by the total number of birds, which is 30. That is 12.3, but we are not cutting birds in pieces, so we're going to round that to 12. Do the same thing for flock Y. They ate 33% of the food, which is 0.33. We need to multiply that by the total birds, which is 30. That gives us 9.9. But again, we're not cutting up birds. Okay, so I'm going to round that to 10. There are 10 birds in the second generation. Flock Z, 0.26 times 30 total is 7.8. So I could round that to 8 birds in the flock. Alrighty, so do you have questions about how I got this so far? Everybody's good on these 6 numbers right here. Stop me now if you have a question. You can send it to me in a private chat if you don't want to do it in the main chat room, that's fine. All right, so each flock started with 10, but now by the time they have kids, flock X has 12 babies, okay? There were 10 adults and they have 12 babies. Flock Y had 10, now they have 10 babies, so they stayed about the same size. Flock Z had 10, but now in the second generation, they only have 8. So does anybody have a thought or a guess as to why flock X grew and flock Z shrunk? Why do you think that X grew and Z shrank? All right, so flock X ate more food than flock Z. Remember, flock X had 41% of the food. That means that they're healthier, they can go on and reproduce. Flock Z probably didn't have enough food, so maybe some birds died of starvation before they had babies, or they weren't healthy enough to have babies. Okay. Yes, I know they're actually little birds, but I just call them babies because it makes things easier for me. Okay, so baby birds. Clear this. Okay. The flocks all started with 10 birds. You guys just told me that flock X was the most successful at feeding, so it will have the greatest number in the second generation. Flock Z was the least successful at feeding and has shrunk the most.
Is this what you predicted? Either way, be sure to record the results in your data table. Then click Next to watch the second generation feed.
All right, so he asked you to record your results. Remember up here in these tables, I told you that because we're doing it together and going through it step by step, you don't have to write that down if you don't want to. Okay, if you're one of those people and you need to write it to remember it, that's fine. Okay, but you don't have to. I'm only asking you to write down this part, and we're not doing anything on that yet, because we're going through it together step by step.
Will flock X continue to have an advantage? Click the button to start. Once again, as the birds feed, watch the table update with food counts. Now that the feeding period has ended, record each food type eaten by each flock in your data table. Then click Next to analyze the data.
All right, so they took this second generation, or no, I'm sorry, they still took the first generation, but they ran it again, because if you just do it one time, you don't really scientifically, you can't prove that that's going to happen every time. If I flip a quarter one time and it lands on heads, that doesn't mean that it's always going to be heads. So you run the same simulation or the same experiment again to see if you get the same results.
Once again, compute percentages based on the food eaten and multiply each percentage by the number of birds, 30, to get the number of birds in the third generation.
So we're going to run the simulation. We ran it again. We're going to use that same information again. Okay, so now you're going to be able to do this part. I did the first one. Now I want you to do this one. On my screen, there's an annotate button at the top. For yours, you may have to click those little 3 dots where it says more options and then select annotate. But once you hit the button that says annotate, it'll give you a little bar with the text, or you can draw. So I want you to take a minute, okay, on your computer, you do it, and it'll show up and right on my screen. I want you to write these answers or do the math, fill in the boxes. All right, I'm going to put my answer in. I'm going to do pink today. All right, so for the percentages, when you multiplied, okay, or divided, I'm sorry, 147 divided by the 300, you should have gotten 49%, which is what it looks like you guys did. Kind of move that extra one just because it's easier to read, 49%. Then, for the next one, 93 divided by the 300 gives us 0.31. Oh, yeah, let's just do it slow. $31. 60 divided by 300 gave you 0.2, which as a decimal is 20%. So now we're going to figure out the number of birds. 0.49, and we're going to multiply that by the 30 birds to get 14.7, which I'm going to round to 15. 31%, and we multiplied it by 30 total birds, gives us 9.3. 20% times 30 gave us 6. Let's think about it. Flock X started with 10. After second generation, they're at 12. By the third generation, they were at 15. Y started with 10, was at 9, and then 9 again. But look at flock Z. They had 8 at the second generation and 6 by the third generation. What do you think is going to happen if this trend continues? If we were to continue and do some more rounds, what do you think would happen? No more flock Z. Yep, they're probably going to go extinct eventually. And you might have a whole bunch of flock X. And flock Y seems like it'd be pretty consistent. All right, but then if flock Z goes extinct, and there's no more flock Z, what do you think might happen to X or Y? Probably. So if Z disappears and they're not fighting for food anymore, these numbers might be more like 17 and 11 or something. I don't know. Okay, just giving you an example. But since there was no more flock Z to compete for food, the others had more food and would probably increase. Good job. All right, so we know that right now, when there are bugs, fruits, and seeds, X was increasing really quickly and Z was decreasing.
During the first half of the lab, flock X grew, in part due to its ability to pierce and tear apart the fruit, but also because it ate a fair amount of the other two types of food. But look at the environment, which has changed. There's no longer any fruit. A plant disease has stricken the island. So that you can make a valid comparison of this half of the study with the first half that you already completed, there are once again 10 members of each flock of birds. When you are done with this half of the lab, you will be able to compare the results of this half to the first half and see the effect of changing the food available. But for now, predict the outcome. What do you think the feeding results of this generation of birds will be?
All right, so if we take away the fruit, okay, which is, what do you think is going to happen? Remember, flock Y ate the most fruit. So what do you think is going to happen if there is no more fruit? All right, no more flock Y. Flock X will die. Flock X will decrease. Y is going to die off. They'll have less to eat. Y might become extinct. It will adapt. Okay. So remember on your lab sheet, I told you there's another box. They won't die because they're still eating. We did this one already. This was your first one where we predicted the first lab. Now in this box, you're going to predict what happens in the next lab. Okay? You can put your own, you don't have to copy mine exactly. I'm just giving you kind of some sentence starters to help you kind of start your sentence a little bit. I predict that blank will occur when we remove the fruit. If there is no fruit, this will happen to flock blank. Whether you want to say you think flock X is going to die, flock Z is going to improve, okay? I'm just giving you some sentence starters. So go ahead and take a minute on that blank piece of paper or that blank document or on your hand in Sharpie, wherever, and jot down your prediction, okay? Can't type on the PDF, don't panic. You can write it on a blank piece of paper. You can write it on a sticky note, on the back of your lunch receipt, okay? You can write it down anywhere. Send a text message to yourself if you have to. Yep, wherever you have it, just so that you have it somewhere and you can use it later to complete the lab. Like when we get done working through it, you're going to take those predictions and add a little bit more to it, okay? Make it sound a little bit nicer than mine, and then that's what you're going to submit, and you're just going to type it, so you won't have to submit the PDF, because that was chaos last time. So I didn't even make you guys try to upload the PDF this time. That was chaos, so we're not going to do that right now. All right, so I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to make your prediction, and then we'll go on to the next part. And again, our other students have put some great predictions in the chat box above, if you'd like to go back and use those.
Now that you have made a prediction, click Next to see if your prediction matches the scenario.
All right, let's see what happens.
Which flock will eat the most this time? Click the button to start. As the birds feed, watch the table update the food counts. Now that the feeding period has ended, record each food type eaten by each flock in your data table. Then click Next to analyze the data.
Okay, so flock X now ate 57%. Y, I'm sorry, not percent, pieces. Y had 153 and Z had 90. If you add all that up, that's 300 pieces, 150 of each. So there's still the same amount of food. There's still 300 pieces of food. The amount did not change. Still the same amount of food, but we changed the type of food. All right, so look at this. Let me get my pointer. Go. Y and Z ate 60 bugs. X had 30. Y had 93 seeds, whereas X and Z had much less. All right, so let's see what that does to the next generation.
Once again, compute percentages based on the food eaten and multiply each percentage by the number of birds, 30, to get the number of birds in the second generation.
All right, take a minute, do the math, put in your numbers on the board. Okay, put your answers on the board and we'll go over them and look. All right, so, ooh, okay. All right, I tried to move these over the best I could so we could read everything. So the percentage of food that they ate. Okay, the percentage of food that they ate. Block X, earlier they were getting like, what was it, 40 and 50% of the food. Now they're only getting 20 or 19%. Block Y was getting 30% of the food. Now they're getting about half. Block Z was getting, let's see what it say, 20, 28% of the food. Now they're getting about 30. You guys have the right answers. I'm just going to retype this to make it slightly easier to read. There we go. All right, so flock X, the percent of food they ate went way down. Oh, that's not down. Flock Z, the percent they ate stayed pretty close to the same, but flock Y, okay, went up a lot. So let's look at the numbers of the second generation. 6, 15, and 9. Flock X went from 10 to 6, so they decreased a whole bunch. Flock Z went from 10 to 9, so they stayed about the same. Okay, changed a little bit, down by 1, but overall not a bad number. But flock Y went way up. They went from 10 to 15. Right, so they increased a whole lot. That's very different than the results when the fruit was still there. When the fruit was still there, X was increasing, Y was the same, and Z was decreasing. Okay, so when we had fruit, X increased, Y stayed the same, Z decreased. With no fruit, X went down, Y went up, and Z stayed the same. Right, so the birds, because of the lack of fruit, they had to adapt and either change what they ate or they're not going to survive very long.
One last time, watch the birds feed. Will flock Y eat so well that the flock will grow even more? Now that the feeding period has ended, record each food type eaten by each flock in your data table. Then click Next to analyze the data one last time.
One last time. Compute percentages based on the food eaten, and multiply each percentage by the number of birds, 30, to get the number of birds in the third generation.
Okay. Again, these tables are at the top of your lab sheet, but because we're doing it together, I don't need you to do it twice, okay? I only want you answering on this last page where we've made our predictions. So we're going to answer together on my screen right here in Canvas, and then you don't have to answer on that lab sheet. Eventually, you're going to be doing your whole lab sheet by yourself, but we're going to get there slowly. So take a minute, do the math, put it on the board. Hey, if somebody else is writing right there in that same spot, try to move yours just a little bit so they're not directly on top of one another. All right, it's open. You should be able to write on the board now. All right, looks like we got it. I'm going to clear these just so that it's easier to read, and I'm going to type the answers. All right, it was 10.67, which we're going to round to 11. 8.7, I'm going to round to 9. All right, so flock X only got 11% of the food. Y had 60%, Z had 29. Remember, X started with 10, then they went to 6, now they're down to 3. Y started with 10 to 15 to 18. Z, 10 to 9 to 9. So if there's no fruit on the island, remember, okay, if they don't bring in some fruit or get their trees fixed because they said there was some kind of fruit disease, flock X might not survive. Flock Y now is growing. Before this, it was the other way around. So changing the food available, not the amount of food, but the food available, definitely changed what species or what type of bird, or even which one of the finches could survive. Because these birds are all finches. They're all the same type of bird. So they're just shaped a little bit differently.
Now make sure that you are ready for the post-lab reflection. Did you record all of the data throughout the virtual lab?
Okay.
Summarize your findings by filling in the blanks.
I don't know if it lets you click on that. If it will let you click on this drop-down menu, you're more than welcome to do that. If not, you can just type it out to the side. It's not going to let you do it without asking for control of my mouse, which I'm not allowed to do, because then you could access any of the files and pull up anything on the computer. And that is not, we're not allowed to do that, because we have issues with kids like shutting my computer down or putting all kind of stuff we shouldn't. So you can just type it on the side out here if you want to put your letter in there, or you put it in the chat box. Right, so when we still had 3 foods, flock X was the most successful. But when we changed that and we only had 2 types of food, flock Y was more successful. Okay, so come back to your lab sheet or your blank paper or your phone, wherever you're writing down this information. Okay, we already made predictions for 1 and 2. Now we're going to do our third box. Okay, oh, we did this one, we did this one. Now we're going to work in that third box, the post-lab reflection. So after the lab, right now, here's what you're going to include here. What happened? You're going to make some reflection and make some comments and basically tell me what you learned. Some questions you could use to help you. What happened over time? Why did that happen? What happened when we removed one food? Why did that happen? What's going to happen if this trend continues? Could the birds adapt? How? What happens if they don't adapt? Okay, so you're basically going to reflect on what you learned in the lab. Okay, and I didn't put an answer because you're going to put your own answer there. Remember, I told you don't have to upload this. Here's how you're going to complete your assignment for a grade. All right. Remember, let's clear the stuff. Okay, remember, we're on modules. We came down to today's date. Give me 1 second to flip it over to student view here so I can show you what yours is going to look like. All right, today's date. Okay. Lab, complete for a grade. This is the one you're going to complete and submit for a grade. When you open this, okay, it tells you it's due the 30th, tomorrow night at 11:59. It tells you there are 8 questions. You don't have a time limit, and you do have 2 tries. The natural selection lab is found in Canvas and needs to be completed in Canvas first. We did that. Then complete this lab worksheet as your grade. The assignment is divided into 2 sections, part A and B. Each is 50 points, making the assignment worth 100 points. Part A is the written portion of the assignment. We did that. Okay? Please remember that proper sentence structure is important. Predictions are worth 12.5 points each, and the post-lab reflection is worth 25 points. Part B is multiple choice. And there are 5 questions and they're worth 10 points apiece. Okay, so question 1, you predicted what you thought would happen. Put in your prediction. Make sure to use complete sentences, capital letters, punctuation, check your spelling. Okay, I just jotted down some stuff on the board and told you to kind of jot it down. Now you're going to refine it and revise it, make it pretty, make it sound good, put a little more effort in. Okay? Give me like, I don't know, maybe 2 sentences-ish. If you have more, that's great. But at least a couple. I think that blank will happen to block blank because da-da-da. Turn that into a couple of sentences very nicely. Then you're going to make your prediction about no fruit. Basically the same thing, okay? Complete sentences, capital letters, punctuation, spelling. There's no fruit, I think that blank, blank, blank will happen because da-da-da. The post-lab reflection. Hey, I'm looking for a paragraph of like maybe 5 to 7 sentences telling me what you learned. Some things you could include. What happened at first? Why did that happen? What happened when there was no fruit? Why? What if this time of like the fruit disease and no fruit continues? What if the fruit grows back? What happens to the birds if they don't adapt? What are some ways they could adapt? All right, and you can add some more information. I'm just giving you something to help you get started. A good solid paragraph of 5 to 7 sentences probably should be there. Remember your capital letters and your punctuation, your spelling, all that. We did all 3 of those, and I'm going to upload the video after class so you can go back and watch this video as well. Then you're going to come down to the bottom. Okay? A couple of multiple choice questions. I think there are 5 actually, 5 multiple choice questions. Question 8 is a review of what we did earlier this week. Question 7 asks you to use kind of your brain and tell me what happens in the food chain. 6 is ecosystem biodiversity that we talked about this week. 5 is biodiversity that we've already covered. And 1 is natural selection that we just did. I'm sorry, question 4 is natural selection that we just did. So the 3 that we covered plus the multiple choice that are a review of everything we've covered this week. Once you finish that, okay, you click Submit Your Quiz. Okay. I haven't graded this part yet. I'll have to grade that, and I can't grade it till you get it submitted. Okay, but I don't know if it'll show you the answers after you've taken both attempts, because you only get 2 tries. Okay. So if I were you, I would wait until I got this part graded and then redo it. Okay. Let me grade it and see what you missed first, then redo it. Don't take both attempts tonight, because I haven't graded your writing, so that's not going to help you. All you'd be able to really change is your multiple choice. All right, it is almost 2:30. Do you have questions for me about what to do, how to complete it, what to turn in, when to do it? Student is just a test, because like a sample, because I can't go in under your name, because then it would mess with your grades. Okay, and I'm going to leave this part for question 3 up for just a minute if you'd like to jot down those questions. Okay, again, I didn't really answer it for you because we covered those answers throughout the lab, but I'll leave it here a minute if you want to take a picture or jot down. You don't have to answer every single one of those questions, but it would just be some good sentence starters and topics to help you. Oh, there's a student there. I see. I thought you were talking about my quiz answers because it's under test student. Huh. I didn't know you guys could pick your own names. That's cool. All right. It is 2:30. I'm done. You guys are free to go. I'm going to hang out a few more minutes. If you need to ask questions, if you want me to go back over something, if you have problems, if you want to copy down the questions on the board, I'll hang out here a couple of minutes. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and you are free to go, guys.